The war between the Dracoon Empire and the Cilician Concord had lasted for 11 long years. It was a war of fire and metal, fought across 100 star systems, in the black spaces between suns, where light took years to travel, and death took only seconds. Millions had died, whole planets had been burned down to bare rock, and still, neither side could win. On this day, in the system known as Veyron Depth, the two great fleets had gathered for what many believed would be the final battle. The Dracoon brought 700 warships, their hulls painted in dark red and black, shaped like the claws of the great predator birds that once ruled their homeworld. The Cilician brought 650 ships, pale silver and blue, built in smooth curves, like water frozen in place. Between them stretched a gap of space, 300,000 kilometers wide, filled with drifting wreckage from 1,000 smaller fights that had come before. Admiral Threxus Khan stood on the bridge of the Dracoon flagship, the Talon of Ashes. He was tall for his kind, with dark scales along his neck and a long scar across one eye from an old battle. He watched the tactical display with the patience of a hunter who had waited a long time for his prey to step into the open. "All ships report ready," said his second-in-command, a younger Dracoon named Varric. "Weapons charged, shields at full strength." "Good," Threxus said. "Today we end this." Across the gap of space, on the Cilician flagship Deep Current, Fleet Commander Ael Sarath watched the same numbers with a different kind of worry. The Cilician people did not believe in easy victories. They believed in careful moves, in patience, in never showing more strength than was needed. But 11 years of war had worn down even their patience. Her people were tired. Her home cities were half empty of young ones, because so many had gone to fight and had not come back. "Commander," said her sensor officer, a small Cilician named Doru, "the Dracoon fleet is holding position. They are waiting for something." "They are waiting for us to move first," Ael said, "so they can claim we started it." "Does it matter who starts it?" Doru asked quietly. "By the end, no one will remember who moved first, only who is left standing." Ael did not answer. She only watched the red lights of the enemy fleet glowing steady across the black gap, like a field of small, dangerous stars. For 3 hours, nothing happened. Both fleets held their positions, testing each other's patience, testing each other's nerve. Small scout ships moved at the edges, watching, reporting, pulling back. It was a dance that both sides knew well after 11 years of war. Wait, watch, wait some more. Whoever moved first without a clear advantage would lose ships for nothing. Then, at exactly the moment when Admiral Threxus was about to give the order to advance, something happened that had never happened before in the recorded history of either empire. Every sensor screen on every ship in both fleets went completely blank. Not blank in the way of a broken screen, showing static or darkness. Blank in a stranger way. The screens still worked. Power still flowed to them. But the information they showed made no sense. Numbers that should have stayed still were spinning wildly. Distances between ships that had been measured in exact kilometers a moment before now read as impossible things, some showing distances of 0, some showing distances larger than the whole galaxy, some simply showing nothing at all, a blank gray nothing that no engineer had ever designed a screen to display. "What is this?" Threxus snapped, standing up from his command chair. "Varric, report." Varric's hands moved fast over his console, but nothing he did brought the sensors back to normal. "Admiral, I don't understand. The sensors they are receiving something, but it is not readable. It is like trying to listen to 1,000 voices, all speaking at once, in 1,000 different languages." On the Cilician side, the same panic spread through the deep current. Doru's hands trembled slightly as he tried every trick he knew to clear the display. Nothing worked. "Commander," he said, "I have never seen anything like this. It is not enemy jamming. Jamming blocks signals. This is different. It is like something is standing between us and the truth of what is out there, and it does not care whether we can see through it or not." Ael Sarath felt a cold feeling grow in her chest, a feeling she had not felt in years of war. Fear of the unknown was worse than fear of the enemy, because at least the enemy could be understood. "Bring weapons to full alert," she ordered. "If we cannot see, then we must be ready for anything." The same order was given on the Dracoon side, though neither fleet could see the other clearly give it. For long minutes, 700 Dracoon ships and 650 Cilician ships sat blind in the dark, weapons ready, engines humming, unable to trust any information their instruments gave them. Then a new light appeared. It did not flash into view like a ship dropping out of faster-than-light travel usually did, with a bright burst of energy that sensors could track and measure. Instead, it simply was there, as if it had always been there, and only now had someone bothered to look at it directly. A single ship, sitting exactly between the two fleets, in the middle of the gap that neither side had dared to cross. The ship was not large by the standards of either empire's biggest battleships. It was perhaps 400 meters long, shaped in a way that seemed to shift slightly depending on the angle from which it was viewed, like something that did not want to be fully understood by the eye. Its hull was dark, almost black, but with a strange quality to the darkness, as if it drank in light rather than simply absorbing it the way ordinary black metal would. There were no visible weapons, no visible engines, no markings that either the Dracoon or the Cilician scholars, who had studied thousands of species across the galaxy, could recognize. "Identify that ship," Threxus ordered, his voice tight. I can't, Admiral," Varric said. "Every scan I run comes back empty. It is like the ship is not fully here. Like it exists but does not want to be measured." On the deep current, Ael Sarath stared at the same strange dark shape on her main view screen, since the sensors gave her nothing useful and she had to rely on simple visual cameras instead, the oldest and simplest tool a ship possessed. "Doru," she said slowly, "in 11 years of this war, have you ever seen a third party enter a battlefield like this?" "No, Commander, never." He paused, checking his readings again out of habit, even though he already knew they would show nothing new. Whatever species built that ship, they either do not know we are at war, or they do not care. Either way, they have walked directly into the middle of it without any warning at all. Word spread through both fleets in minutes. Captains on ship after ship stared at the strange dark shape sitting quietly in the black, doing nothing, saying nothing, simply existing in a place where by all the old rules of war, no unknown ship should dare to be. Admiral Threxus felt his claws tighten on the arms of his command chair. In his long career he had fought pirates, rebels, and the Cilician enemy, across 100 battles. He had never once felt truly afraid on his own bridge. He felt something close to it now. "Open a channel," he said. "Broadcast on all known frequencies. Tell them to identify themselves and leave this system immediately, or we will treat them as a hostile target." The message went out, translated automatically into a dozen known galactic trade languages, the kind of basic communication protocol used by every civilized species that had ever made first contact with another. For a long moment, there was no response. Then, quietly, without any dramatic flash or burst of static, a reply came back. It was not in any of the dozen languages the Dracoon had sent. It was in a new language entirely, one that no computer aboard the Talon of Ashes recognized. But strangely, within seconds, the ship's translation systems adapted, learning the new language almost instantly, faster than any translation matrix should have been able to manage. The voice that came through was calm, unhurried. It did not sound frightened, or angry, or even particularly interested in the two massive fleets surrounding it. "This is the vessel Quiet Errand, Registry Terran Expeditionary Fleet. We did not intend to arrive in the middle of an active conflict. We ask that both sides hold position while we determine our location and complete essential repairs. We do not wish to involve ourselves in a war that is not our own." On the Cilician side, the same message reached the deep current moments later, having been picked up on open channels that both fleets could hear. "Terran," Doru repeated softly, turning the unfamiliar word over. "Commander, I have never heard that name before, not in any record of known species." Ael frowned at the view screen, at the strange dark ship sitting calmly between two armadas that could, between them, unleash enough firepower to turn a small moon to dust. A ship that appears from nowhere, blinds every sensor in two entire fleets, without even trying, and then asks us politely to wait while it fixes itself. She let out a slow breath. "Either this is the most confident species we have ever encountered, or the most foolish. Or both," Doru said. Admiral Threxus was not a patient man by nature, but 11 years of war had taught him to recognize when patience was the wiser path. He did not immediately open fire, though every instinct told him to destroy the strange ship before it could reveal whatever hidden danger it carried. Instead, he did something rarer for a Dracoon commander. He hesitated, and he thought. "Varric," he said, "how did it get past our sensors completely undetected, appearing instead of arriving? Faster than light travel leaves a signature. Every drive system we have ever recorded leaves some trace." "I don't know, Admiral. There was no trace. It is as though the ship was already here, and only became visible to us a moment ago. As though it had been sitting in that exact spot the entire time, and something about it had simply kept us from noticing." That thought settled over the bridge like a physical weight. A ship that could sit unseen in the middle of a battlefield, watching two fleets prepare to destroy each other, and reveal itself only when it chose to, not detected, chosen to be seen. Across the gap, aboard the mysterious ship itself, the mood was rather different from the fear and tension gripping both alien fleets. Inside the command deck of the Quiet Errand, a woman named Captain Elena Voss stood with her arms crossed, studying the two massive alien fleets on her own display, which showed everything with perfect clarity, none of the confusion that plagued the Dracoon and Cilician sensors. She was in her 40s, with steel-gray eyes and short dark hair beginning to show streaks of white at the temples, the kind of face that had seen hard things and had not been broken by them. "Well," she said, "this is not where we meant to end up." Her first officer, a broad-shouldered man named Marcus Webb, stood beside her, arms folded, watching the same display. "No kidding. The drive misjump put us right in the middle of somebody else's war. Nice timing." "Casualties?" Elena asked. "None on our side. The dampening field held during the jump. A few systems need recalibrating, nothing critical. We got lucky." "Luck," Elena repeated, a faint, humorless smile crossing her face. "Two fleets, over 1,300 warships between them, and we drop right in the gap like we planned it as a party trick." She shook her head slowly. "Sensor status on the aliens?" "Both fleets are running blind," Marcus said. "Standard result of our drive's exit signature. It confuses conventional sensor arrays for a while. Should clear up naturally within a few hours, unless they've got equipment sensitive enough to punch through it faster." Elena studied the two colors of ships on her screen, red, black, and silver blue, arranged in the careful formations of two war-hardened militaries. "Do we know anything about them yet?" "Working on it," said the ship's linguist and cultural specialist, a quiet young man named Dr. Aiden Cho, seated at a nearby console. "I've pulled basic information from their communication broadcasts. Two species. They call themselves the Dracoon and the Cilician. Long war. At least a decade, based on the reference points in their messages. Could be much longer. Neither side seems close to winning." "And do either of them know what we are?" Elena asked. "No," Aiden said. "Our translation matrix had to build their languages from nothing, in real time. They've never heard of humanity, never heard of Earth. As far as either of these fleets know, we might as well have fallen out of the sky." Marcus let out a short breath that was almost a laugh, though there was no humor in it. "Great. First contact, and it's with two armies about to kill each other, right as we're stuck between them, with our pants half down from an emergency jump." Elena did not smile at that. She kept her eyes on the tactical display, on the slow, careful movements of both fleets, as they tried to work out what to do about the strange ship that had appeared, uninvited, in the middle of their war. "Marcus, how long until the drive is fully repaired?" 6 hours, minimum. Maybe 8, if the containment coils need replacing, instead of just realignment. That's a long time to sit still between two fleets that don't trust each other, and definitely don't trust us. "Yes, ma'am." Elena was quiet for a moment, thinking. She had commanded the Quiet Errand for 6 years, through deep space survey missions, through first encounters with 3 other alien species, through one very tense standoff with pirates near the edge of known space. She had learned, across those years, that the most dangerous moment in any encounter was not the moment of first contact itself, but the moment right after, when both sides were still deciding whether the other was friend, enemy, or something in between. "Aiden," she said, "send a message back to both fleets. Tell them the truth. We are not part of their war. We do not want to be part of their war. We need time to repair our ship, and once we are able, we will leave their territory and trouble them no further." "Should I mention anything about our capabilities?" Aiden asked. in case they consider attacking us. Elena thought about that for a long moment. On the tactical display, the combined weight of 2 fleets sat waiting. Over 1,300 warships. More firepower than she had ever seen gathered in one place in her entire career. Against that, the Quiet Errand was a single ship, advanced beyond almost anything either alien species had ever built, but still only one ship. No, she said finally. Let them wonder. A ship that can appear out of nowhere and blind every sensor in 2 entire fleets without trying will make them cautious all on its own. We don't need to threaten anyone. We just need them to leave us alone long enough to fix our drive and go home. And if they don't leave us alone? Marcus asked quietly. Elena's steel-gray eyes did not waver from the display, from the 2 great fleets hanging in the black, still deciding, still afraid, still watching the small dark ship that had appeared among them, like a whisper of a much larger, much stranger silence out in the wider galaxy. Then, she said, they will learn exactly why every sensor on their ships went blind the moment we arrived, and they will not enjoy the lesson. The message went out a moment later, calm and simple, exactly as she had ordered. On both the Talon of Ashes and the Deep Current, the words echoed through command decks full of officers who had never, in all their years of war, faced a moment quite like this one, a war they understood perfectly, suddenly interrupted by a stranger from beyond the stars, who wanted nothing from them at all, except to be left alone. But wars, once started, rarely leave newcomers alone for long, and somewhere in the tense quiet between 2 fleets and 1 small dark ship, the first small spark of something far larger than a border skirmish had already begun to catch. The message from the Quiet Errand reached both fleets at the same moment, carried on open frequencies that neither the Dracoon nor the Silesian could block, because they still did not understand how the strange ship's communications worked well enough to jam them. Admiral Threxus listened to the calm, almost gentle voice repeat its request. Leave us alone. We mean no harm. We only need time to repair our ship. He did not trust it. In his long years of service, he had learned that the calmest voices often hid the sharpest claws. Varric, he said. What do the scholars say? Has anyone, anywhere in Dracan records, ever heard the word Terran, or Earth, or human? Varric had already been searching. He shook his head. Nothing, Admiral. Not in any archive we carry aboard this ship. I have sent a request to the Deep Archive on our homeworld, but the answer will take days to arrive, even at fastest relay speed. Days we may not have, Threxus muttered. On the Silesian side, Fleet Commander A.L. Sarath was having a similar conversation with her own officers. She stood near the main viewport, arms folded behind her back, watching the dark shape of the strange ship sitting quietly between the 2 fleets. Doru, run every database search you can. I want to know what a Terran is. Doru's search came back just as empty as Varric's had. Nothing, Commander. It is as if this species has never crossed paths with any known civilization before now. That alone is strange. Space is vast, but not so vast that an entire species could remain completely unknown to both of our empires, unless they were very far away, or very well hidden, or very new to space travel. Or all 3, Ale said quietly. She studied the dark, strange shape of the ship a while longer. There was something about it that unsettled her in a way she found hard to name. It was not large. It carried no obvious weapons that her sensors, still struggling to fully recover, could detect. And yet something about the calm, patient way it sat between 2 war fleets, unafraid, unhurried, made her feel small, in a way she had not felt since she was a very young officer standing before her first true battle. Send a private message to the Terran ship, she said. Not on the open channel, where the Dracoon can hear everything. A direct, narrow signal. To say what, Commander? Ale thought for a moment. Tell them the Silesian Concord does not wish them harm. Tell them we understand what it is to be caught somewhere we do not belong, and ask them, quietly, whether they might be willing to speak with us alone, away from Dracoon ears. Doru raised an eye-ridge in surprise but did the work anyway, sending the narrow, private signal toward the Quiet Errand. Aboard the human ship, Aiden Cho noticed the second, quieter message arrive, only moments after the first open one. He glanced at Elena. Captain, we have a private communication. Silesian side only. They're asking to speak with us, away from Dracoon awareness. Elena considered this, Smart move on their part, trying to make a private connection before their enemy can. Suggests they're the more cautious side of this war, or the more desperate one. She thought a moment longer. Reply. Tell them we will speak, but plainly say that anything discussed privately with one side, we will also be willing to discuss with the other, if asked. We do not want to be seen playing favorites in someone else's war. That's a fair answer, Aiden said, sending the reply. Marcus frowned slightly. You sure that's wise, Captain? Telling them up front you won't keep secrets for them might make them trust us less. Or it might make them trust us more, Elena said. A species that plays no favorites in someone else's war is a species with nothing to gain by lying to either side. That is exactly the reputation I want us to have right now, while we're sitting here vulnerable with a broken drive. While the diplomatic messages passed carefully back and forth, deep in the engineering section of the quiet errand. The ship's chief engineer, a stocky woman named Priya Nandan, worked with her team to repair the damaged containment coils that had caused the misjump in the first place. How bad is it really? Marcus asked over the comm, checking in from the bridge. Bad enough, Priya answered, her voice slightly strained from crouching inside an access tunnel lined with humming machinery. The coils took more strain than they were built for. We pushed the drive past safe limits trying to escape that gravity well back near the Kesslith system, and it paid us back by dropping us somewhere we never meant to go. She paused to tighten a connection, sparks briefly flashing near her gloved hand. Give me 6 hours, and I can have primary containment stable enough for a short jump. Give me 10, and I can have it fully repaired, safe for a long jump home. We might not have 10 hours, Marcus said. Then I'll do what I can with 6, Priya replied simply, and went back to work. Back on the bridge, Elena Voss studied the tactical display with the calm focus of someone used to making decisions under pressure. The two alien fleets had not moved from their positions, still cautious, still uncertain what to make of the ship sitting quietly between them. That was good. It gave her time, but she knew from experience that such standoffs rarely lasted forever. Sooner or later, one side or the other would decide that action, any action, was better than more waiting. Aiden, she said, tell me more about what you've learned of their war. If we're stuck in the middle of it, I want to understand what we're dealing with. Aiden pulled up what information his translation systems had gathered from the tremendous amount of communication traffic flowing between the two fleets. Transmissions never meant for outside ears but picked up regardless by the quiet errand. As far more sensitive systems. From what I can tell, this war has lasted at least 11 years, likely longer, he said. It began over a resource dispute in a border region between their two territories, a cluster of systems rich in a rare mineral both species need for their faster-than-light engines. What started as a small conflict grew, as these things often do, into something much larger. Now it seems to be less about the original resource and more about pride, about revenge for losses already suffered, about neither side being willing to be the first to back down. Sounds familiar, Marcus said grimly. Humanity had a few wars like that, back before the unification. Yes, Elena said quietly. We know exactly how that story goes. It rarely ends well for anyone. There's something else, Aiden continued. Casualties on both sides appear to be extremely high. Based on fragments of their communications, entire fleets have been lost more than once over the years. Colonies have been destroyed. I believe both empires are approaching the edge of what their populations can sustain. This war may be closer to ending than either side realizes, simply because neither side can keep fighting it much longer. Elena absorbed this quietly. She had seen wars before, in the history records of her own species, wars that dragged on long past the point where either side had any real hope of victory, sustained only by momentum, by grief, by the simple terrible logic that too much had already been lost to stop now. That, she said, is a dangerous kind of war, the kind where desperate people sometimes do reckless things. As if summoned by her words, a new alert chimed on the tactical display. Marcus leaned forward, reading the data. Captain, we've got movement. Small craft, launching from the Dracoon flagship. Looks like a shuttle. Maybe a dozen crew aboard. No weapons signature detected. Heading is directly toward us. Elena's eyes narrowed slightly. A diplomatic approach or a trick? Could be either, Marcus said. Could be they want to talk face to face, instead of over comm channels. Could also be a way to get a closer look at us, gather intelligence, before deciding whether we're a threat worth destroying. Or both, Aiden offered. Elena stood from her chair. Let them approach. Bring them into the forward docking bay, under full escort. I want 2 security officers with them at all times. Polite, but firm. No weapons drawn unless there's a genuine threat, but no room for tricks either. Understood, Marcus said, relaying the orders. Aboard the small Dracoon shuttle, the officer leading the approach was a mid-ranked commander named Resson, chosen by Admiral Threxus specifically because he was known for keeping a level head even in the strangest situations. As the shuttle drew closer to the dark, strange shape of the quiet errand, Resson found himself staring at the hull through the shuttle's small viewport, trying and failing to fully understand its shape, the way it seemed to shift subtly depending on the angle he viewed it from. Strange craftsmanship, he murmured to his co-pilot. It is almost as though the ship does not want to be looked at directly. Do you think it is a trick of our eyes, sir? Some kind of stress from what happened to our sensors? Perhaps, Resson said, though he did not sound convinced. Or perhaps this Terran species builds ships according to principles we do not yet understand. The shuttle was guided into a docking bay aboard the quiet errand. A smooth, calm process handled entirely by the human ship's automated systems, with none of the rough uncertainty Resson had expected from an unknown vessel. When the shuttle doors opened, Resson stepped out first, followed by 2 of his own guards, into a bay lit with soft white light, clean and orderly, nothing at all like the more industrial, weapon-focused design of Dracoon ships. Marcus Webb stood waiting to greet them, flanked by 2 armed but relaxed-looking security officers, their weapons holstered but visible. Welcome aboard the quiet errand, Marcus said, the words translated instantly and smoothly into the Dracoon tongue by systems built into the room itself. Commander Resson, I presume? Captain Voss is waiting for you. Resson studied the human before him for a long moment. Tall, though not unusually so. Built solidly, with the kind of bearing Resson recognized in his own soldiers, the quiet confidence of someone who had faced danger before and lived. You know my name and rank already, he said. Your intelligence gathering is impressive, for a species we have never before encountered. Marcus offered a slight, controlled smile. We listen well. Please, follow me. They were led through corridors that Resson studied carefully as he walked, noting details, memorizing layouts out of old habit, though he suspected the humans knew exactly what he was doing and did not particularly mind. Eventually they reached a meeting room, simple and functional, where Captain Elena Voss stood waiting. Commander Resson, she said, extending a hand in the human custom of greeting, though she did not seem surprised when he did not know the gesture, and simply gave a slight bow of his head instead. Thank you for coming to speak with us directly. I imagine your admiral has many questions. He does, Resson said. As do I. What are you? Why did you appear in the middle of our fleet's position with no warning? And why did your arrival blind every sensor across 2 entire fleets? Elena gestured for him to sit, and after a moment's hesitation, he did. We are called humans, she said. Our species comes from a world called Earth, very far from here. Our ship suffered a mechanical failure during travel, and it caused us to arrive in this location unexpectedly. We did not choose to appear in the middle of your war. If we had any choice in the matter, we would have avoided it entirely. And the sensors? Resson pressed. A side effect of how our ship travels between the stars, Elena said simply. It is not a weapon, and it was not used against you deliberately. It is simply what happens when our engines exit long-distance travel. The effect fades on its own, given time. Resson studied her closely, searching her face and voice for any sign of deception, the way he had been trained to read the subtle signs on an enemy interrogator's expression. He found nothing but calm, steady honesty, which unsettled him almost more than a lie would have. Admiral Threxus wishes to know your intentions, he said finally. Do you intend to remain in this system? Do you have any interest in our war? None at all, Elena said. We wish only to repair our ship and return home. We have no stake in your conflict with the Silesian Concord, and no desire to gain one. And if we do not believe you? Resson asked, his voice carefully neutral. If the Admiral decides that a ship capable of blinding 2 entire fleets is too dangerous to simply allow to leave unharmed. The room went quiet for a long moment. Elena's gray eyes held Ressen's without flinching, without any visible fear at all. Then, she said, her voice as calm and even as it had been through the entire conversation, your Admiral would be making a very serious mistake. I would strongly advise against testing that theory, Commander, not out of any threat from me, simply out of respect for the lives of everyone aboard your fleet, Dracun and Cilician both. Ressen felt something cold settle in his chest at those words, spoken so calmly, without any bluster or aggression, as though she were simply stating a fact about the weather, rather than warning him away from a fight that could destroy his entire fleet. He had faced many enemies in his years of service. He had never faced anyone quite like this before. He rose slowly from his seat. I will relay your words to the Admiral, he said. I hope, for all our sakes, that they are true. They are, Elena said simply, and let him go. As the Dracun shuttle departed the docking bay, Marcus turned to Elena, an eyebrow raised. You think that helped, or made things worse? Elena watched the small shuttle pull away on the display, heading back toward the looming shape of the Dracun flagship. I think, she said slowly, we just bought ourselves a little more time. Whether that time turns out to be enough depends entirely on how desperate these people have become, after 11 years of war. Far across the gap of space, aboard the Talon of Ashes, Ressen delivered his report to Admiral Threxus in the quiet, careful tone of a man who had genuinely been shaken by what he had seen and heard. Threxus listened without interrupting, his claws tapping slowly against the arm of his command chair. When Ressen finished, the Admiral sat in silence for a long moment, staring at the strange dark shape of the quiet errand. Still sitting patiently in the black, waiting, unafraid, unmoved by the weight of 2 entire fleets surrounding it. A species that blinds our sensors without meaning to, he said quietly, almost to himself, and warns us away from a fight without ever raising its voice. He let out a slow breath through his teeth. Varric, send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them we may have found something far more important than winning this war today. Across the gap, on the deep current. Fleet Commander A.L. Sereth received a similar report from her own scouts, who had shadowed the Dracun shuttle's approach from a careful distance and picked up fragments of the encounter through careful, patient listening. She stood alone at her viewport for a long while afterward, watching the dark ship, thinking of the strange, calm certainty in its warnings, the quiet, unshaken confidence of a species that had appeared from nowhere and seemed entirely unafraid of the 2 most powerful fleets in the region. Doru, she said finally, prepare a formal invitation. I wish to speak with this Captain Voss myself. And far beyond the edges of the war, in the deep black between the stars, something vast and ancient had already begun to take notice of the strange new arrival, drawn by the ripple its arrival had sent through the fabric of space itself, a ripple far larger than either the Dracun or the Cilician yet understood. The invitation from Fleet Commander A.L. Sereth arrived aboard the quiet errand. Within the hour, carried on the same narrow, private channel the Cilician had used before, Aiden Cho read it twice before bringing it to Elena. She wants to meet you in person, he said. Aboard her own flagship, this time, not ours. She's offering full safe passage, guaranteed by her personal word as fleet commander. Marcus frowned immediately. That's a much bigger risk than letting them come to us. On our ship, we control the environment. Over there, we're walking into the heart of their fleet. I know, Elena said, studying the message on the screen. But refusing might look like weakness. Or worse, like we trust the Dracun more than the Cilician, when the truth is we trust neither side yet. If we want to keep this standoff calm long enough for Priya to finish her repairs, we need both sides to believe we are being fair with them. So you're going, Marcus said. It was not really a question. I am, Elena confirmed, but not alone, and not unprepared. She turned to Aiden. Pull together everything you've learned about Cilician culture and body language so far. I want to understand what I'm walking into, as much as we can manage on short notice. Within the hour, a shuttle from the quiet errand departed toward the Cilician flagship, carrying Elena Voss, 2 of her security officers, and Aiden Cho, whose translation and cultural expertise she wanted close at hand for a conversation this important. Aboard the Deep Current, Ael Sarath waited in a formal meeting chamber, simple and elegant in the Silesian style. All smooth curved surfaces and soft blue lighting that Aiden noted immediately reminded him of the color of deep ocean water. Doru stood at her side, along with two of her senior officers. When Elena entered, Ael studied her carefully, the way a careful predator studies an unfamiliar animal, uncertain yet whether it is prey, rival, or something else entirely. "Captain Voss," Ael said, her translated voice smooth and measured. "Thank you for accepting my invitation." "Thank you for extending it, Commander Sarath," Elena replied. "I understand you have many of the same questions Admiral Threxus had." "Perhaps more," Ael said. "The Dracun are direct people. They ask what a thing is, and whether it threatens them. My people prefer to understand the deeper shape of things before deciding how to feel about them." She gestured for Elena to sit at a low table between them. "Tell me about your people, Captain. Not just what you are, but who you are." Elena considered the question carefully before answering. "We are explorers," she said. "Our homeworld is far from here, farther than either of your empires has likely ever traveled. We have only recently begun to travel among the stars, in significant numbers, compared to how long your own peoples have likely been spacefaring." "How recently?" Ael asked. "In the scale of centuries, not millennia," Elena admitted. "We are, in many ways, still young among the stars." Ael's eye ridges rose slightly at that, an expression Aiden noted, and quietly filed away as surprise. "Young, and yet your ship blinded the sensors of 2 war fleets without even meaning to, and arrived in a location no vessel of ours could have reached without our knowledge and preparation. If this is what a young species from your people can do, Captain Voss, I confess I find myself curious, and a little unsettled, about what an older one might be capable of." Elena did not answer that directly. Instead, she said, "We did not come here to demonstrate strength, Commander. We came here by accident, and we wish only to leave the same way we arrived, quietly, and without causing harm to anyone." "And yet you have already caused harm, in a manner of speaking," Ael said, not unkindly, but firmly. "Your arrival has thrown both fleets into confusion at a moment when we were prepared to fight what may have been the final battle of an 11-year war. Whatever you intended, Captain, your presence here has consequences, whether you wish it to or not." There was a silence after that. Elena weighed her words carefully before speaking again. "May I ask you something in return, Commander?" Ael inclined her head slightly, granting permission. "Do you want this war to end?" Elena asked. The question hung in the room for a long moment. Ael's officers shifted slightly, clearly uncomfortable with such a direct question from an outsider who had been among them for less than a day. But Ael herself simply looked at Elena for a long while, something unreadable moving behind her pale eyes. "Every soldier who has fought this war for more than a year wants it to end, Captain," she said finally, quietly. "The question is not whether we want it to end. The question is how it ends, and whether my people can accept an ending that does not include some measure of justice for everything we have lost." "And the Dracun?" Elena asked. "Do you believe they feel the same?" "I believe," Ael said slowly, "that Admiral Threxus has buried more friends and family in this war than I have. I believe he wants it to end as badly as I do. I also believe that neither of us trusts the other enough to be the first to say so out loud, for fear it will be seen as weakness and used against us." Elena absorbed this quietly. It was, she thought, a very old and very human kind of tragedy, dressed in the shapes of 2 species she had never encountered before today. 2 tired sides, both wanting the same thing, both too afraid of appearing weak to reach for it first. "Commander," she said carefully, "I want to be clear that my ship has no interest in influencing the outcome of your war. That is not why we are here, and it is not something we intend to do." She paused. "But if there were ever a moment when both sides genuinely wished to speak honestly with each other, without fear of the conversation being used as a weapon later, my crew would be willing to help arrange it, not to take sides. Simply to make sure both sides could speak, without either one feeling as though they had shown weakness by doing so." Ael studied her for a long moment. "Why would you offer such a thing, Captain? What benefit is it to your people?" "None, directly," Elena admitted. But I have seen wars like this before. In the history of my own people, I know how they end, when neither side reaches for peace in time. It is rarely with justice for anyone. It is usually simply with more graves, on both sides, until there is nothing left to fight over, but the memory of everyone already lost. Something shifted in Aile's expression at that. A softening Aiden noted carefully, the first genuine crack in the careful diplomatic mask she had worn since Elena's arrival. I will consider your offer, Captain Voss, Aile said quietly. I cannot promise the Dracun will accept it, even if I do. That is all I ask, Elena said. The choice must be theirs to make, just as it is yours. The meeting continued a while longer, touching on smaller matters, the technical details of ensuring safe passage for the bridge. Quiet errand. While its repairs continued, small courtesies exchanged between two commanders who had begun, cautiously, to develop something that was not quite trust, but was perhaps the beginning of respect. As Elena's shuttle departed the deep current to return to her own ship, Doru turned to Aile with a thoughtful expression. Do you believe her, Commander? About wanting no part in our war? Aile watched the small human shuttle depart on the view screen, her expression unreadable. I believe, she said slowly, that Captain Voss is telling the truth as she understands it. Whether her ship's presence here remains harmless, however, is a question that history alone will answer. Sometimes the largest consequences come not from what someone intends to do, but simply from what they represent by existing at all. Back aboard the quiet errand. Priya Nandan's voice came over the comm just as Elena returned to the bridge. Captain, good news. Primary containment coils are stable. We could make a short, safe jump if needed, effective immediately. Full repairs for a longer journey home will still take another 4 hours, but we're no longer sitting completely vulnerable. That is good news, Elena said, some of the tension easing from her shoulders. Keep working. I'd still prefer the full repair before we leave. Understood, Captain. Marcus, who had been monitoring the tactical display throughout Elena's absence, turned to her with a curious expression. How did it go with Commander Sarath? Elena took her seat, considering how best to summarize the conversation. Tired, she said finally. That's the word I keep coming back to. Both sides are tired of this war, Marcus. They just don't trust each other enough to be the ones to say so first. That sounds like an opening, Marcus said. It is, Elena agreed. A small one. Whether it turns into anything more depends entirely on whether Admiral Threxus feels the same way Commander Sarath does, and whether either of them is brave enough to risk reaching for peace when they've spent 11 years being told that reaching for anything but victory is a betrayal of everyone they've already lost. Aiden, seated nearby, spoke up thoughtfully. For what it's worth, Captain, I don't think this is going to stay a quiet standoff much longer. I've been monitoring communications across both fleets. There's a growing faction among the more senior Dracun officers who believe our arrival is some kind of trick by the Silesian, a new secret weapon disguised as a neutral third party. And there's a similar faction among the Silesian who wonder if we might secretly be working for the Dracun. Elena's brow furrowed slightly at that. Neither side trusts that we're actually neutral. Not entirely, no, Aiden said, which makes sense, in a strange way. After 11 years of war, both sides have likely learned to see enemy tricks in everything unexpected. A ship appearing from nowhere, capable of blinding sensors and moving unseen, fits the shape of a weapon far more easily than it fits the shape of an honest accident. Marcus exhaled slowly. So we're not just caught in the middle of their war. We might become the excuse either side needs to break the standoff and start shooting again. That is my concern as well, Elena said grimly. She looked to the tactical display, at the two great fleets still holding position, still watching each other, still watching the small dark shape of her own ship sitting quietly between them. Aiden, keep monitoring their internal communications as closely as you can, within reason. I want to know the moment either side starts seriously considering action against us, or against each other, using our presence as an excuse. Understood, Captain. Priya's voice crackled over the comm again, this time with a note of urgency that had not been there before. Captain, you'd better come see this. We're picking up something new. Not from either fleet. Something else. Entering the system from deep space, and it's approaching fast. Elena straightened immediately. Define fast, Priya. Faster than anything, either the Dracun or Silesian ships have shown capability of matching, Priya said. Whatever this is, Captain, it isn't one of theirs, and it's headed directly toward us. The bridge went quiet for a moment, as the new information settled over everyone present. Elena's gray eyes hardened slightly as she turned back to the tactical display, watching a new, unfamiliar signature appear at the very edge of long-range sensors, moving with a speed and purpose that suggested whatever it was, it had not arrived here by accident, the way the quiet errand had. Full alert, Elena said quietly. Whatever this new arrival is, I have a feeling our quiet little standoff is about to become considerably more complicated. Across the gap of space, both the Dracun and Cilician fleets picked up the same new signature moments later, and for the first time since the mysterious ship's arrival, an entirely new kind of tension spread through both fleets, one born not from suspicion of each other, or even suspicion of the strange dark ship in their midst, but from something that neither species had names for yet, watching from the deep dark beyond the edges of the battlefield, drawing steadily, deliberately closer. The new arrival did not announce itself the way the quiet errand had. There was no strange blinding of sensors, no sudden appearance from nowhere. Instead, it came in slowly, visible the whole way, a massive shape, growing larger on every screen, across both fleets, as it crossed the outer edge of the Veyroon depth system, and continued inward, unhurried, unafraid, exactly like something that knew it had nothing to fear from anyone already present. Aboard the Talon of Ashes, Admiral Threxus stared at the growing shape with an expression that had shifted from confusion to something closer to genuine alarm. Varric, identification. Now. Varric's hands moved rapidly across his console, running every scan available. Admiral, it is enormous. Larger than any single vessel in either of our fleets combined. And the hull composition, the energy signatures, none of it matches anything in our records. This is not a ship built by any species known to the Dracun Empire. Could it be Terran? Threxus asked. A larger vessel belonging to the same species as the ship already among us. I don't believe so, Admiral, Varric said slowly, still working through the readings. The energy signature is different, where the small dark ship seemed to hide itself, almost as though it did not wish to be measured. This new vessel is not hiding at all. It is simply vast, and it does not care that we can see it clearly. On the deep current, Ael Serath watched the same growing shape with equal unease. Doru, talk to me. Commander, whatever this is, it is not moving like a warship preparing for battle. It has made no attempt to form up in any combat configuration. It is simply approaching, directly, as though it has somewhere specific it intends to be, and does not consider either of our fleets significant enough to alter its course around. That is either supreme confidence, Ael murmured, or supreme ignorance of the danger it walks into. I do not believe it is ignorance, Commander, Doru said quietly. I believe it simply does not consider either of our fleets, together or separately, to be a danger to it at all. That thought settled over the deep current. His bridge with the same cold weight it had settled over the Talon of Ashes. Two great fleets, each capable of devastating entire systems, and neither one certain whether the newcomer even registered them as a threat worth acknowledging. Aboard the quiet errand. The mood was different, though not necessarily calmer. Elena Voss stood at the center of her bridge, watching the enormous shape draw closer on her own, far more capable sensors. Her expression carefully controlled, but her eyes sharp with focus. Aiden, she said, tell me you have something. Aiden had been working furiously since the first alert, cross-referencing every fragment of data the day. Quiet errand. ZAS advanced sensors could gather. I have partial matches, Captain, though nothing certain. The hull design, the energy patterns, they share some similarities with old survey reports filed by deep-range scout vessels, decades ago, from a region of space far beyond even where the Dracun and Cilician territories reach. Reports of a species referred to only as the Architects, though that name may simply be a label some earlier explorer gave them, not what they call themselves. What do the reports say about them? Elena asked. Very little, and most of it second-hand, Aiden admitted. The Architects are believed to be an old species, possibly one of the oldest still active in this region of the galaxy. They are not known to make war, not in the way the Dracun and Cilician understand it. but they are also not known to tolerate disruption of things they consider important, and no one has ever been entirely certain what those things might be. Marcus frowned deeply at that. So we don't actually know if this thing is dangerous. We don't know much of anything for certain, Aiden said. That's the honest answer. Priya's voice came over the comm again, tight with concentration. Captain, I'm reading something strange from the approaching vessel. It's not weapons fire, not yet, but there's an energy buildup consistent with some kind of large-scale scanning array. I think it's about to do a deep sweep of the entire system, ships and all. Elena's jaw tightened slightly. Can we shield against it? Working on it, Captain, but I don't have enough information about what kind of scan it's about to run to know how effective any shielding will be. Across the gap, both alien fleets braced instinctively as the massive newcomer drew close enough that its full size became apparent even to the naked eye through viewports and cameras. It was larger than either flagship by a significant margin, its hull built in smooth, curved lines that seemed almost organic in places, dotted with lights of shifting colors that pulsed in slow, deliberate patterns, like something breathing. Then, without warning, a wave of energy rippled outward from the enormous vessel, washing over both fleets and the quiet errand. Alike in the span of a few seconds, Admiral Threxus felt every system on his bridge flicker briefly before stabilizing again. "Report!" he barked. "Everything is intact, Admiral," Varric said, sounding faintly stunned. "But I believe we were just scanned. Thoroughly. Every ship in our fleet, in exhaustive detail. I don't understand how the scan reached this deep into our systems without triggering any of our security protocols." The same confusion spread through the Silesian fleet, and aboard the quiet errand. Priya's voice came through, tight with a mixture of alarm and grudging professional respect. "Captain, that scan just mapped nearly every system aboard our ship, down to a level of detail our own diagnostic tools can't match. Whatever technology that is, it's well beyond anything we've encountered before. Beyond the Dracun, and Silesian too, from what I can tell of their reactions." Elena's eyes remained fixed on the massive vessel, now holding position at the edge of the gap between the two fleets, close enough that its full shape dominated every view screen. Did it take anything? Damage anything?
"No, Captain. As far as I can tell, it just looked thoroughly but without causing harm."
A new transmission arrived a moment later, this time addressed not to one fleet or the other, but broadcast openly to all three vessels present, translated instantly and effortlessly into every language spoken among them, in a voice that was neither male nor female, neither warm nor cold, simply vast and patient, in a way that made something in Elena's chest tighten instinctively. "We have observed a disruption in this region," the voice said. "A war between two young species, ongoing for a significant span of your local time. We have also observed the recent arrival of a third species, previously unknown to this region, whose vessel displays technology and behavior inconsistent with either combatant." A pause, brief but heavy with meaning. "We wish to understand the nature of this disruption, and the intentions of the newcomer among you. On the Talon of Ashes." Admiral Threxus exchanged a tense glance with Varric. "Is it addressing us, or the Terran ship?" "I believe all of us, Admiral," Varric said. "It seems to be asking for an explanation, from everyone present. Ael Serath, aboard the Deep Current." Felt a similar chill at the vastness of the voice, the sense of something ancient and powerful weighing judgments that neither her people nor the Dracun could fully understand. "Doru, has this species made contact with anyone in the galaxy before? Any record at all?" "Fragments only, Commander. Old rumors, unconfirmed reports. If they are the species I believe them to be, they are rarely encountered, and almost never directly involved in the affairs of younger species. Whatever brought them here now, it is not something that happens often. Aboard the quiet errand." Elena Voss straightened, understanding with sudden clarity that whatever answer she gave next might shape far more than just her own ship's fate. She stepped forward and spoke clearly, her voice steady despite the tension coiled tight in her chest. "This is Captain Elena Voss, of the Terran vessel. Quiet errand. We arrived in this system by accident, due to a malfunction in our long-range travel systems. We have no involvement in the conflict between the Dracoon Empire and the Cilician Concord, and we seek only to complete repairs and return to our own territory." There was a pause before the vast, ancient voice replied, "We are aware of the circumstances of your arrival. Our concern is not with the accident itself, but with what follows from it. Your presence has already altered the behavior of both combatant fleets in this system. Such alterations, however small, are not without consequence." Marcus, standing near Elena, kept his voice low. "Captain, I don't like where this is heading." Elena held up a hand slightly, asking for quiet, her focus entirely on the conversation unfolding. "We understand that our presence has caused disruption," she said aloud. "It was not our intention, and we deeply regret any difficulty it has caused. But I would ask, respectfully, what concern the internal war of these two species is to your own people. If I may ask, what is your interest here?" Another pause, longer this time, as though the vast intelligence behind the voice were considering how much to share with a species it had only just encountered. "We do not interfere in the wars of younger species," the voice said finally. "Such conflicts are, in most cases, matters for those species alone to resolve, through whatever cost that requires. But we take a particular interest in moments when the balance between combatants shifts due to outside forces, whether by accident or design. History across this region of the galaxy has shown us that such moments, however small they may seem, can determine whether a war ends in a matter of seasons or drags on for generations more, consuming entire civilizations before it finally burns out." Elena absorbed this carefully, understanding now the shape of the concern, if not yet its full depth. "You are asking whether my ship's presence here will shorten this war, or prolong it." "Precisely," the voice confirmed. "And whether that outcome, whichever way it falls, occurs by intention or by simple careless accident on your part." The weight of that question settled heavily over the bridge of the barrage. Quiet errand. Elena glanced briefly at Marcus, at Aiden, both of them watching her with the same careful attention, waiting to see how she would answer a question that carried far more consequence than any first contact protocol she had ever trained for. "I cannot promise you an outcome," Elena said finally, choosing her words with great care. "I do not control the choices of the Dracoon Empire, or the Cilician Concord. What I can promise is this: my crew and I will not act carelessly. If there is any way our presence here can help bring this war to an honest end, rather than simply prolonging suffering on both sides, we will offer that help freely, without demanding anything in return, and without favoring either side over the other." There was a long silence after that, long enough that Marcus shifted uncomfortably beside her, long enough that Elena wondered if she had somehow given the wrong answer to a question whose right answer she could not fully guess. Then the vast voice spoke again, quieter now, almost thoughtful. "That is an honest answer, Captain Voss. Honesty, in matters such as this, is rare enough to be noted." Another pause. "We will withdraw for now, and observe. Should your presence here prolong suffering rather than ease it, we will return, and our patience at that time may be considerably shorter." Without further warning, the enormous vessel began to move, drawing away from the gap between the two fleets with the same unhurried, deliberate speed it had used to arrive, until it vanished once more into the deep black beyond the edges of the system, leaving both fleets, and the small dark human ship among them, alone once more with the weight of a war that suddenly felt far larger and far more closely watched than any of them had realized before. On the Talon of Ashes. Admiral Threxus exhaled slowly, a breath he had not realized he was holding. "Varric," he said quietly, "I believe we have just been given a warning far larger than any weapon could deliver. Aboard the Deep Current." Ael Serath watched the empty space where the vast vessel had been, her mind working through the full implications of what had just occurred. "Doru," she said finally, "send a message to the Dracoon fleet. Tell Admiral Threxus I wish to speak with him directly. Not through intermediaries, not through careful diplomatic language designed to protect our pride." She paused. "Tell him it is time we spoke honestly with each other, before something far larger than either of our empires decides to speak for us instead." The message from Ael Serath reached Admiral Threxus within minutes, carried this time not through a scout or a junior officer, but directly, commander to commander, exactly as she had promised. Threxus read the request twice before answering. 11 years of war had taught him to expect tricks from the Silesian, careful maneuvers dressed up as honesty. But something about the timing, coming so soon after the vast ancient vessel's warning, felt different, felt real. "Varric," he said slowly, "arrange a secure channel. Just myself and Commander Sereth. No advisors, no recorded transcripts sent to Fleet Command until I say otherwise." Varric hesitated. "Admiral, speaking to the enemy commander without official record could be seen as—" "I am aware of how it could be seen," Threxus said, cutting him off, though not unkindly. "I have also just watched something far larger than either of our empires arrive out of the deep black and remind us both how small our war truly is, in the wider shape of things. Arrange the channel, Varric. I will take the consequences of this choice myself." Moments later, the connection opened, and for the first time in 11 years of war, Admiral Threxus Khan and Fleet Commander Ael Sereth spoke to each other directly, without translators standing between them beyond the basic technology both fleets already carried, without advisors shaping every word for political effect. "Commander," Threxus said, his voice rough but steady. "Admiral," Ael replied. There was a pause, heavy with 11 years of history. Neither of them needed to speak aloud. "I imagine you felt the same thing I did, when that vessel spoke to us." "I felt very small," Threxus admitted, an honesty that surprised even himself. "I have commanded fleets for 20 years, Commander. I have never once felt as small as I did in that moment." "Nor I," Ael said quietly. "It occurred to me, watching that thing withdraw into the dark, that we have spent 11 years destroying each other over a war that something far older than either of us considers barely worth noticing, except as a curiosity to be watched, and perhaps corrected if it drags on too long, or ends too badly." She paused. "I do not wish to be a curiosity, Admiral. I do not wish to be a lesson that older species tell their young ones about what happens when younger species refuse to stop fighting, long after any real reason for the fight has faded." Threxus was quiet for a long moment, his claws resting still against the arm of his chair. None of the usual tension in them. "Neither do I," he said finally. "I have buried more soldiers than I can name, Commander. I no longer remember, if I am honest with myself, exactly what it was we were fighting for in the beginning. I remember only what we have lost fighting for it since." "The mineral fields at the border," Ael said softly. "That is what it was for, in the beginning. A resource dispute, small enough that I suspect neither of our governments truly believed it would grow into what it became." "And now," Threxus said, "I doubt either government much cares about those mineral fields any longer. What they care about is not losing, after so much has already been spent. Pride has replaced purpose, Commander. I believe it did so years ago, and neither side has been willing to admit it." Ael let out a slow breath, one that carried the weight of 11 years in it. "Then perhaps it is time someone admitted it, even if that someone must be the two of us, speaking without permission from anyone above us, risking everything our own governments might think of us for doing so." "Perhaps it is," Threxus agreed. They spoke for a long while after that, not as enemies negotiating a temporary truce, but as two tired commanders who had, for the first time in over a decade, allowed themselves to say plainly what both had privately believed for years, that the war had long since stopped serving any purpose beyond its own continuation, and that ending it, even at the cost of pride, even at the cost of admitting that neither side had truly won anything worth the price paid, was better than continuing to feed it with the lives of soldiers who no longer remembered why they were fighting in the first place. Aboard the quiet errand, Elena Voss watched the shifting communication patterns between the two fleets with cautious hope, as Aiden monitored the traffic passing between them. "Something's changing, Captain," Aiden reported. "The tone of their communications has shifted significantly. Less hostile posturing, more direct, careful language. I believe Admiral Threxus and Commander Sereth are speaking to each other honestly for the first time in a very long while." "Do you think our arrival caused that shift?" Marcus asked. "Or was it that vast ship's warning?" "Likely both," Elena said thoughtfully. "Sometimes it takes an outside shock to remind two exhausted sides that the fight they've been having no longer matches the reasons they started it." She watched the tactical display, the two great fleets still holding their careful positions, though something in their formations had begun, subtly, to relax. "Priya," Status on repairs? Full repairs complete, Captain, Priya reported. We're capable of a safe, stable jump home whenever you give the order. Elena considered this for a long moment, watching the fragile, cautious beginning of something that might, given enough courage from both sides, grow into a genuine peace. Not yet, she said. Let's give them a little more time. I'd like to see how this plays out before we leave. Over the following hours, word spread through both fleets of the private conversation between their commanders, and slowly, carefully, official communications began to shift as well. Junior officers who had spent years being taught to hate the enemy, without question, found themselves for the first time hearing their own commanders speak openly about the possibility of an honest ceasefire, about a formal peace negotiation to follow, about ending a war that had consumed so much of both empires' strength that neither could truly claim to be winning it any longer. It was not instant. It was not without resistance. Aboard the Talon of Ashes, several senior officers protested bitterly at the suggestion, insisting that 11 years of sacrifice could not simply be abandoned without some clear victory to show for it. Aboard the Deep Current, similar voices rose among Aelserath's own staff, warning that any weakness shown now would only encourage the Dracoon to strike harder once Cilician forces stood down their guard. But beneath the resistance, something else moved as well, quieter but steadier. Relief. Exhaustion, finally given permission to be spoken aloud. Soldiers on both sides who had long since stopped believing the war could ever truly end, now found themselves daring, cautiously, to hope that perhaps it could. 3 days after the quiet errand, unexpected arrival in the Veyroon depth system, Admiral Threxus Khan and Fleet Commander Aelserath issued a joint declaration, unprecedented in the history of either empire, a full ceasefire, to be followed immediately by formal peace negotiations, mediated not by any third party, but by the two commanders themselves, who had come, in the space of those 3 strange days, to trust each other more than either had trusted anyone on their own side of the war in a very long while. Elena Voss watched the formal declaration arrive on her own communication systems with quiet satisfaction, though she was careful not to take too much credit for what had unfolded. This isn't something we did, she reminded her crew, gathered on the bridge to watch the news arrive. This is something they chose, because they were finally ready to choose it. We simply happened to be here when the moment came. Sometimes that's all it takes, Aiden said quietly. The right accident, at the right moment, to shake something loose that was already close to breaking free on its own. Before the quiet errand departed the system, both Admiral Threxus and Commander Sereth sent personal messages to Elena, each expressing gratitude in their own way, careful and formal from the Dracoon Admiral, warmer and more open from the Cilician commander, both acknowledging, in their own manner, that the strange arrival of a lost human ship had played some small part in reminding two exhausted empires that peace remained possible, even after 11 years of believing otherwise. "Will you tell Fleet Command back home about all this?" Marcus asked, as the quiet errand prepared for its final jump back toward human territory, the war, the ceasefire, that enormous ship that scanned us and gave us that warning. Elena considered the question as she watched the 2 alien fleets on the display, no longer arranged for battle, but drawing slowly together instead, forming the first tentative shapes of what might, in time, become the beginning of a genuine peace between two peoples who had spent over a decade believing peace was impossible. "Yes," she said finally, "all of it, especially the warning from that ancient vessel. If there truly are species out there old enough and powerful enough to watch over younger civilizations and quietly correct the worst of their mistakes, humanity needs to know that. We need to understand exactly how small and how new we still are in this galaxy, no matter how confident our own history might make us feel." "You think we'll cross paths with them again?" Priya asked, having come up to the bridge to oversee the final jump preparations personally. "I don't know," Elena admitted, "but I suspect that somewhere out in the dark, whatever that vessel was, it's still watching, still measuring how the younger species of this galaxy handle the mistakes that come with growing up among the stars." She looked around at her crew, at the quiet confidence and steady discipline that had carried them safely through an encounter far larger and stranger than any of them had trained for. We did well here, not because we fought anyone, or because we showed off some great strength. We did well because we stayed honest, stayed calm, and refused to be pulled into a fight that was never truly ours. Is that the lesson, Captain? Marcus asked, a faint smile crossing his face. Stay calm, and don't get dragged into other people's wars? Elena allowed herself a small smile in return, the first real one since the misjump had first thrown them into the middle of the Veyrun depth system. Something like that, she said, though I suspect we haven't heard the last of that ancient vessel, or of what it truly is that it's watching for, out here in the deep dark between the stars. The order was given, and the quiet errand prepared for its final jump home, its dark hull glowing faintly with the building energy of its repaired drive. Behind it, the Dracun and Cilician fleets continued their slow, careful drawing together, the first true steps of a peace, 11 years in the making, sparked, in some small but undeniable way, by the strange and unplanned arrival of a lost human ship that had entered a galaxy-spanning war without warning, and left every alien sensor blind, only to leave behind something far more valuable than fear, the fragile, precious beginning of an ending to a war that everyone involved had almost forgotten how to hope for. As the quiet errand vanished into the stars, heading home at last, far beyond the edges of the Veyrun depth system, in the deep and patient dark, where even starlight took years to travel, something vast and ancient continued to watch, quietly, thoughtfully, already turning its attention toward whatever young and reckless civilization might next require its silent, careful correction. And somewhere among the stars, humanity, still young, still new to the wider galaxy, had taken one more small step toward a truth it would only fully understand much later, that sometimes, the greatest strength that people could show was not in the battles they were willing to fight, but in the wars they were wise enough to walk away from, leaving behind not destruction, but the quiet possibility of peace.